They are terrified. Not just uneasy, not merely skeptical, terrified. You feel it, don't you? The way their smiles falter when you talk about your dreams. The way their compliments come wrapped in layers of doubt. Wow, you're really ambitious. Are you sure that's realistic? They aren't rooting for you. They're bracing for the moment they think you'll fall. You've seen it in their eyes. That flicker of panic when you accomplish something they didn't see coming. Oh, they'll clap for you, sure, but listen closely to the applause. It's hollow. Their fear is louder. Because your success, it threatens everything they've convinced themselves is impossible. They won't make it, they whisper in rooms you're not in. They're aiming too high. But here's the kicker. They're not scared of you failing. They want you to fail, because your success would shine a light on every excuse they've ever told themselves. Picture this. A small-town diner late at night. A group of people hunched over coffee cups, swapping stories about how life didn't go their way. It's the system, one says, shaking his head. It's rigged against people like us. The others nod, murmuring agreements. But then there's you, the outlier. The one who decided the system wasn't an immovable wall, but a challenge to outthink. Remember when they tried to start that business? Someone scoffs, trying to belittle you. They laugh, but it's uneasy. Because deep down, they know you're not sitting in that diner. You're out there, working, planning, building. Let's talk about fear for a second. Not your fear, theirs. They're afraid you'll prove that the rules they've been living by are optional. That all the reasons they've given for staying stagnant, lack of time, lack of resources, lack of luck, are just stories they tell themselves to sleep at night. You remember that one coworker, don't you? The one who always had something slick to say. Don't work so hard, they'll just take advantage of you. But the moment you started getting recognition, they changed their tune. Must be nice to get lucky like that. Lucky? The audacity. As if they didn't see the late nights, the sacrifices, the way you turned every setback into a stepping stone. And let's not forget the subtle sabotage. Oh, you're really going for that? I heard it's really competitive. Or the classic, don't get your hopes up too high. Translation, don't make us uncomfortable by dreaming bigger than we ever dared. But here's the twist they never see coming. Their doubt isn't your kryptonite, it's your fuel. Every condescending smile, every backhanded compliment, every whispered, I don't think they can do it, adds to the fire. Imagine for a moment that they're right, that you do fail. What happens then? They'll laugh, sure. They'll say, I told you so, and feel validated for a while. But then, they'll go back to their lives, the same lives they're so desperately trying to convince themselves they're satisfied with. Meanwhile, you'll be out there again, trying, learning, growing. You've probably heard the story of the crab bucket, right? How if one crab tries to climb out, the others will pull it back down. Not because they hate that crab specifically, but because they can't fathom the idea of escape. That's them. That's their fear, their insecurity, their inability to imagine a life beyond the bucket. But here's the thing about you. You're not just any crab. You've got claws sharp enough to break free. And when they reach to pull you back, you'll use their grip as leverage to climb even higher. And don't think for a second that they won't notice. They'll watch you rise with a mix of envy and awe, their fear morphing into grudging respect. But even then, they'll try to rewrite the narrative. Well, they had help, they'll say, or they got lucky. They'll never admit the truth, that you succeeded because you refused to let their fear infect you. It's almost poetic, isn't it? How the same people who doubted you will one day say they always believed in you. Oh, I knew they'd make it. They were always so driven. And maybe you'll smile and nod, letting them have their little fantasy. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll remind them. You didn't believe in me. You were scared of me. What's scarier to them isn't just that you'll succeed, it's how you'll succeed. Quietly, methodically. While they're busy gossiping and doubting, you're laying bricks, one by one, building something they can't tear down. Let me tell you something about 2025. This year isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about walking into rooms they said you'd never enter, speaking with a confidence they thought you'd never have, and achieving what they swore was impossible. And when that happens, and it will happen, they won't know what to say. Because how do you confront someone who turned your fear into their strength? They'll stutter, they'll stumble, they'll deflect. But you'll just smile. You were too scared I'd succeed, you might say, almost as an afterthought. And then, as they try to find a way to respond, you'll turn and keep walking. But the story doesn't end there, because the truth is they'll never stop watching you. Not really. Oh, they might act like they don't care, scrolling past your posts, avoiding eye contact at gatherings, but they'll always peek through the cracks. They'll check your updates in secret, dissect your every move, trying to find a flaw, a mistake, a moment of vulnerability they can latch onto. You'll live rent-free in their minds, and the irony, you're not even thinking about them anymore. You've moved on, grown past the petty games and whispered criticisms. While they're replaying the same tired narratives, you're writing new chapters. Sometimes it'll feel like you're living in a movie, except you're both the underdog and the hero. Think about it. Every time they doubted you, it was like the villain delivering their monologue, convinced you'd never rise. But you did. And unlike the movies, there's no dramatic confrontation, no teary-eyed resolution. Just you, walking away with everything they said you'd never have. But let's throw in a twist, shall we? Picture this. One of them, maybe an old friend, maybe a coworker who always underestimated you, reaches out. Hey, I saw what you're doing. Congrats. You can hear the tension in their voice, the unspoken envy. Maybe they're genuine, maybe they're not. Doesn't matter, because you'll know deep down that what they're really saying is, I wish I'd had your courage. And here's the thing. You'll be gracious, not because they deserve it, but because you've outgrown the need for their validation. Thanks, you'll say, with a smile that carries no bitterness. It'll confuse them, maybe even unsettle them, because they expect you to gloat, to throw their doubt back in their faces, but you won't. That's not your style. There's a certain beauty in letting success speak for itself. You don't have to shout from the rooftops or plaster your achievements everywhere. The real flex? Living so unapologetically in your truth that it shakes them to their core. Let's pause for a moment and consider their fear again. It's not just about you succeeding, it's about what your success represents. You're a mirror, reflecting everything they could have been if they dared to try. And mirrors? They don't lie. Now imagine the ripple effect. Your journey isn't just about silencing doubters. It's about inspiring others who've been trapped in the same cycle of fear and self-doubt. People will watch you, not with envy, but with hope. If they can do it, someone will whisper to themselves, maybe I can too. You'll become the proof that the rules aren't set in stone, that ceilings are meant to be shattered, that fear is just a shadow and not a wall. And that's what scares them the most. That you're not just changing your story. You're rewriting the narrative for anyone who's ever been told, you can't. But the year isn't over yet, is it? 2025 is still unfolding, and with every passing day, you're adding another layer to the masterpiece. Maybe you'll stumble. Who doesn't? But every fall is just a setup for an even greater comeback. And as you rise again and again, their fear will evolve into something even more potent. Respect. Respect. The thing they'll never admit they're starting to feel. It'll be subtle at first. A change in tone. A hesitation before they speak. A careful avoidance of phrases like, I told you so. They'll never say it outright, but in their hearts, they'll know. You weren't just unstoppable, you were inevitable. And this is only the beginning. But let's take it deeper, into the psychology of why they're so scared. It's not just your success that terrifies them. It's the idea that you've rewritten the rules they've clung to for comfort. For years, they've lived by the narrative that the system is rigged, that only certain people can make it, that they're doomed to mediocrity. And here you come, proving that every excuse they've leaned on was just that, an excuse. In their eyes, you're dangerous, not because you've done the impossible, but because you've shown it wasn't impossible at all. You've made them question everything, and people hate that. They hate having their illusions shattered. They hate seeing you thrive in places they never dared to step into. Picture them now. They're sitting in their rooms, scrolling through your updates, pretending they don't care, but their minds are racing. How? They wonder. How did they do it? How did they break free while I stayed here? The real kicker? Some of them will try to follow in your footsteps. They'll mimic your moves, your strategies, even your style. At first, it'll annoy you, because, let's face it, nobody likes a copycat. But then you'll realize it's not imitation. It's desperation. They're clinging to the hope that if they can just figure out your secret, they might find a way out of their own self-imposed prisons. And here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone watching you is rooting against you. Some of them are rooting for you harder than you know. They're silent supporters, people you've inspired from the shadows. They may never comment, never like a post, never say a word, but they're there, watching, hoping, believing. Keep going, one of them whispers under their breath, scrolling past your latest win. You don't hear it, but somehow you feel it. It's the subtle energy of people sending you strength from afar. People who see you not as a threat, but as a beacon. And let's not forget the unexpected allies. Those who once doubted you, but are now quietly cheering you on. Maybe it's an old friend who drifted away or a colleague who underestimated you. They won't say it outright, but their actions will shift. A supportive comment here, a shared post there. It's their way of saying, I see you, I was wrong. But let's bring it back to them. The ones still too scared to face their own fears. They'll try to discredit you, of course. They got lucky, they'll say, or it's not sustainable. Anything to make themselves feel better about standing still while you sprint forward. You'll hear the whispers, the snide remarks, the passive-aggressive jabs, and you'll laugh. Not because it doesn't sting, but because you know the truth. They're not really mad at you. They're mad at themselves, mad that they let fear win. Why didn't I try? One of them might mutter to themselves late at night. But they won't admit it out loud. Admitting it means facing the truth, and the truth is hard. And you'll keep going. Not out of spite, but because stopping isn't an option anymore. You've tasted what it feels like to rise, to break through barriers, to defy expectations. There's no going back now, but let's not wrap it up yet, because your story isn't finished. In fact, it's only just getting started. You wake up every morning with a sense of purpose that feels almost electric. It's not just about proving them wrong anymore. It's about proving yourself right. You look in the mirror and you don't see the person they used to know. You see someone unrecognizable to them, maybe even to yourself. A force of nature, relentless, unapologetic, and entirely untethered from their opinions. And that's the thing they fear the most. Not just your success, but your freedom. You've stopped needing their approval. You've stopped playing their game. You've built your own board, rolled your own dice, and now you're winning in ways they never imagined possible. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's imagine one of them gets bold enough to confront you. So what? You think you're better than us now? They'll sneer, their words dripping with insecurity masquerading as arrogance. You'll pause. Not because you're caught off guard, but because the question is so ridiculous, it almost deserves a thoughtful response. Better? No, you'll say, your tone calm, measured. But I do think I've stopped letting fear run my life. Can you say the same? Silence. That's what you'll get. Not because they don't have an answer, but because deep down they know the answer isn't in their favor. And as you walk away, you'll hear their muttered protests, their attempts to save face. They've changed, they'll say. Not the same person I used to know. Good. That's exactly the point. You didn't go through hell and back just to remain the same. You didn't claw your way out of their expectations, their judgments, their limitations, just to circle back to who you were before. And let's not forget the irony of it all. The same people who doubted you, who ridiculed your dreams, who tried to clip your wings, they're the ones now holding their breath every time you move, watching, waiting, hoping you'll slip, fall, fail. But you won't. Not because you're perfect, but because you've learned to thrive even in failure. Every misstep, every stumble, every setback, they've only made you sharper, stronger, more resilient. You've turned your scars into armor, your doubts into fuel, your fears into a compass, pointing straight toward your destiny. Do you think they'll ever stop watching? A friend might ask, someone who stood by you through it all. Probably not, you'll reply with a smirk. But that's their problem, not mine. And the truth is, you've stopped caring about their gaze, their whispers, their judgments. You're too focused on what's ahead, a future so bright, so boundless, it feels like you're running on a path made of stars. But even now, as you move forward, you know the story isn't over. It's still being written, one bold step at a time. And with every step, the whispers grow louder. Not because you're faltering, but because you're shining too brightly for them to ignore. Success has a way of amplifying envy, turning casual observers into obsessive critics. Did you hear what they're doing now? One of them might hiss in a hushed tone, scrolling through your latest achievements. The room around them falls silent, heads tilting in unison like a synchronized chorus of doubt. Yeah, I saw, another replies, pretending indifference but gripping their phone just a little too tight. They think they're all that now. But you're not thinking about them, are you? You're too busy plotting your next move, too consumed by the fire in your chest that refuses to be extinguished. You're sitting at your desk, late into the night, crafting plans that would make their heads spin. While they're busy dissecting your life, you're busy building it. And then there's the internal monologue that keeps you going, that little voice in your head whispering truths they'll never understand. They don't hate you. Not really. They hate the reflection of their own inaction that your success forces them to see. But here's the twist. They're not your enemies. Not truly. They're just scared. Scared of what you represent. A reminder that change is possible. That mediocrity isn't a life sentence. That the box they've lived in their entire lives isn't locked. Not everyone has the courage to break out, though. And that's where you differ. You were the one who dared to dream bigger, to step outside, to endure the cold winds of uncertainty, because you knew the air would be fresher on the other side. A memory flashes in your mind, a moment from years ago, back when you were still unsure, still tethered to their expectations. Maybe you should aim lower, someone had said, their tone dripping with faux concern. What if you fail? You had nodded politely back then, swallowing the words you wanted to say. But now, if given the chance, you'd laugh, not out of spite, but because the question itself feels absurd. What if I fail? You'd say now, a glint in your eye. What if I don't? It's this mindset that terrifies them, your refusal to play it safe, your ability to keep rising, no matter how many times life tries to pull you down. And, they've tried. If they couldn't stop you outright, they've tried to distract you, derail you, undermine you in ways both subtle and glaringly obvious. But you've learned their tricks. You see through their masks. The backhanded compliments, the passive-aggressive remarks, the feigned support that crumbles the moment you're out of sight. It all rolls off your back now. You're not worried about them? Another friend might ask. Someone newer to your journey. Someone who hasn't yet seen the depth of your resolve. Worried? You'd reply, chuckling softly. They're not my opposition. They're my motivation. Because that's the truth, isn't it? Every doubt they've cast, every insult they've thrown, every obstacle they've placed in your path, it's all been fuel. They thought they were burying you, but they didn't realize you were a seed. The story doesn't end here, though. It can't. Because every day brings a new challenge, a new lesson, a new chance to rise even higher. And as you keep climbing, one thought lingers in your mind. They're scared of my success. They should be terrified of what's coming next. You smile to yourself, not out of arrogance, but out of quiet confidence. You've barely scratched the surface of what you're capable of. The best part of the story is still unwritten. But here's the thing about fear. It's a choice. They chose to fear your success instead of celebrating it, to cast shadows instead of stepping into the light you're creating. But you chose differently. You chose to rise above, to silence the noise, not with words, but with actions so undeniable that even your harshest critics had no choice but to watch in awe. You chose to stop waiting for permission and start giving yourself the authority to dream, to act, to succeed. And now, as the clock ticks forward, you stand at the threshold of something far greater than even you could have imagined when you began. 2025 is yours for the taking, and you're stepping into it, not as the person they doubted, but as the person they can no longer ignore. In your heart, you know there will still be doubters. Some people will never change, but their opinions don't matter. The applause doesn't matter. What matters is the journey, the purpose, the people whose lives you're impacting along the way. Because success, you've realized, isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about looking in the mirror and seeing someone who didn't let the fear of others define them. Someone who turned whispers into silence and silence into thunderous applause. As you step into the next chapter, you whisper a promise to yourself, one they'll never hear. I'm just getting started. Then, with a smile as calm as it is defiant, you turn the page. Let them watch, let them talk, let them fear. You'll be too busy succeeding to notice.